I am so honored to be sitting with my next guest. I heard the legend of this man before I actually met him. And the first time I actually met him, we went river dipping. And so in his Australian accent, he says, "My biggest fear is cold water." So I was expecting him to freak out, to lose his cool. I was like, okay, Aaron, be prepared. This is gonna be something else. And he got in the water. He didn't say a word. And he stayed just as long as the rest of us. So this is my absolute honor to welcome Josh Woods.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. And Josh, what I love about you is, first of all, I love making you laugh. I think you have the greatest laugh. You have this juxtaposition that you are all tattooed and big and long hair, but you're so soft and kind.
Yeah, it's all a front, that's for sure.
So tell me a little bit about you.
Basically, I was born in Sydney, Australia, and I guess I lived and worked the whole 9 to 5 life from 18 onwards, and then discovered the snowboard life. And then since then, since 27 years old, now I'm 30, I've been just traveling the world snowboarding. And I finally found a place that I think I can settle in, which is kind of cool. So now I'm just trying to make Banff my forever home, I guess, or Canada for my forever home, I should say.
Beautiful.
Mountains, yeah.
And you had a pivotal moment recently that we might say was an awakening. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So the solo hike I went on, I did Cascade solo. And the day I left to do Cascade, I didn't plan on coming home. I remember I left my keys in the truck, I left my wallet, I left everything behind because I was like, I'll come back. I messaged a friend, I didn't say what I was doing, but I messaged her saying, I left my keys and my truck and my wallet, it's parked up in Norquay. And she was just like, what? I just wanted someone to know.
That was your goodbye.
It's crazy. Yeah, it was even thinking about it now, I feel better about it, I still get a tingle, a shiver, really real. That was a plan. When they talk about suicide, people can say I'm gonna kill myself, but until you actually have a plan, that's when it becomes real. So that's what my therapist said. I went on a pretty high watch after I told her all that. But that was the same day I did that. I started to hike by myself. There was no other cars in the car park. There was one other car in the car park, so no one was hiking the trail that day, and I was like, fuck. Because I think deeply, I didn't want that. I didn't actually want that, but I was so fed up with the pain that's what I thought was going to fix it, right? So I guess I went and I took my mushroom microdose as I started the hike, and sometimes they take 20 minutes, sometimes they take 2 hours to kick in, depending on what I've eaten, I don't know what my body wants to do with it. And then I started walking the trail and I saw fresh bear shit everywhere. And I was like, great, I'm probably not gonna make the hike because I'm gonna get eaten by a fucking bear. You know what I mean?
This isn't how I'm planning to go.
This is not a plan, all right? I want to get to the top first. I was just like, fuck.
Want it to be, whoa, did you think about the fall?
I didn't think about it at all because I think I didn't actually want that. Right? So, but it was just the pain. I just wanted the pain to stop. I didn't actually want to not be here anymore. I just didn't want to be in pain anymore.
Yeah.
So I started this hike and I started going, and all of a sudden there's so much bear shit everywhere, and I was like, fuck, there's definitely one watching me right now, because it was steaming, fresh, right? They were just there, and I was like, oh. And then I saw these other 2 girls that were further down the trail. Never met them before. They lived in town, and I was like, fuck. I was like, there's a lot of bear shit here, huh? And they were like, yeah, we're thinking about turning around. I was like, well, if the 3 of us do it together, we're better off if there is bears. And they were like, okay. So I guess we started walking. I didn't obviously say to them anything about me or didn't really talk. We just chatted. We hiked Cascade together, and halfway up, I mean, my brain, I reckon it was the microdose kind of kicked in, and my brain started being this isn't what you want. And I was like, no, not at all. And then it was
it's the medicine talks to you.
It was the medicine talks to me big time. And it was if you can, how about, it was change my perspective. It was how about instead of thinking this is the end, how about thinking this is the beginning? If you can get to the top of this mountain, then you are going to put the suicidal thoughts behind you. If you can conquer this, you can conquer suicide. And I was like, yep, deal. So I just had full focus of I'm getting to the top of this mountain. And when I got to the top, I remember that was the first time I had my journal. The day before, Lainey gave me the journal, I remember she came to my work, she gave me it, she wrote a note in the front, I just like burst into tears because I was so low at that point, and something like that was so beautiful. And then I remember I got to the top of the mountain, and I took the journal with me, and because I was going to leave it at the top, I guess, maybe. And I just all I wrote in it, in like a very, you can still see that I had like teardrops on the page. All I wrote was I did it. Yeah, it was huge. So I was like really...
Maybe that's the front page of your book.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. And I wrote I did it, and then I wrote like Cascade Mountain, the elevation and the day. Yeah, and that was September 21st. I don't think I'll ever forget that day.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's like those particular girls, it was like the perfect storm.
It was perfect. Like I was supposed to run into those people on that trail, you know what I mean? Like everything that happened that day was meant to happen. And on the way back down, we ran into the boss, like the grizzly bear.
Oh my God.
He was about 10 meters from us. He's the biggest bear I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my God.
And he stared at me, and he just literally looked at me, and I remember saying to the girls, I was like, keep walking, because he was so close to us and so big. But when he looked at me, he looked, it was like, I don't know, this is going to sound weird, but it was like, he didn't care, but he also looked at me and he was just like, you need to keep going. And I was like, yep, I'm going to keep going. So and now ever since my brain said that, of thinking that he said to me, whether it was he saying you need to keep going, this is my territory, you need to keep walking, but also I think I spun it in my own brain of you need to keep going, you need to keep living, you need to keep going. So then even after that, I did hikes where I still did hikes where that wasn't the cap. That was, for me, that was the cap of the suicidal tendencies.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have that thought anymore. I was allowed to be sad. I told myself, you're allowed to be sad. Depression's not going to just go now.
Yeah.
But you're not going back to this dark place. You're past that now. You're done. In the summer, so around June, I had a bit of shock, I guess, that I discovered what depression was and what anxiety was. And I'd luckily enough, gone my whole life without ever having to experience it. I'd had family with sort of depression and anxiety, and a loved one that I lived with for 10 years. I lived together for 4 years, we lived together for 10 years. That she had really bad anxiety and depression, and I never understood it. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks in June, and that was like a huge awakening of realizing that I had to do a lot of internal work, because I'd always been so reliant on other people. So I guess I'd been in relationships my whole adult life up until I was, 29 years old. It was with my ex for 10 years, so we were actually married. We were married, we were together for 10 years, and she's still to this day one of my best friends, and we talk all the time. But we got married and then realized our lives were going in very different directions, so we didn't want to hold each other back, so we did the adult thing, I guess, and tried to live our own lives. And then pretty soon after that, I met someone else who was also a great person who I'm also still very close with, and we talk all the time. And then we continued the snowboard life, and then she left in June, and then it was the first time in my whole life I was on my own.
So the loneliness, or being alone with your own thoughts, it created something in you that you'd never looked at. Maybe not created, but... Yeah,
I guess it tapped into something. At first I always asked why is this happening to me? And then after doing all my research of because obviously I was lucky enough not to have the sort of depression where I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't actually want to be at home at all. And all I wanted was to not feel like this. So I listened to podcasts, I went hiking every day, I did anything and everything I could to try and I don't want to say fix it because it wasn't broken, but just better myself. And then I fully did the realization of that it wasn't happening to me, it was happening for me. And that was huge. But it takes a lot to let sort of certain things sink in. Mm-hmm. But you have to be, as Scott Walker always says, you have to be radically open-minded. That's the best way to be in these situations.
And do you mean when the sadness hits, you have to be open-minded?
I think it was more in the healing process. Mm-hmm. So rather than having sitting there and being the whole, why is this happening to me? Or getting down about it and being why me? What have I done? You have to just be okay, why is it happening for me? And then try and figure out what is this as sort of a sign of, or is this an awakening, like you said, is this a time to rebuild, or is this a time of self-discovery, or to discover, for me it was self-love, to understand that truly what that actually meant.
Yeah.
because I don't think I'd ever discovered the love for myself. It was always from a partner. So it was always someone telling me, hey, you look great today. Or like, hey, you look really good. Or that outfit looks really great. Or, oh, you're snowboarding so well today. Or whatever, all these external motives to make me feel good, when I realized that, like, I can do that myself. I just have to learn how.
And how did it manifest for you? You said, I didn't feel like I couldn't get out of bed. How did you know you had a problem?
It was honestly like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, when it got to a point where I realized, I was like, I would not wish this upon my worst enemy. Not that I have any enemies. I'm not really like that. But like, still, like, I would never wish that kind of a pain upon someone. It was like such like an empty, like, almost like no purpose, like there was nothing out there that could ever be good. When I used to wake up and look out the window and I could see Cascade, that was my view. But still, I just had this feeling of just not, like, empty, like nothing.
Yeah, in yoga philosophy, we call them veils that prevent us from being in the present moment.
Yes.
And one of them is the ego that just, like, so desperately wants validation, where it feels small or it feels like super high.
Yeah.
So how did you heal?
I guess first things first was I started listening. Well, when I was really bad, my manager, Abby, she actually booked me in to see a therapist, which was, I didn't have a choice in the matter. And I guess at the time I was maybe being one of those classic males, which I know a lot of people can relate to, that we just go like, no, like, you know, the whole, like, I'm supposed to be strong, I'm supposed to be there for other people because I'm this male figure or whatever. But I was so broken and lost that I didn't know what I was supposed to do or who I was supposed to be, or I had no idea. It was like the universe had literally, like, hit me down so hard, not like intentionally, but like for a purpose, right? That it was like, now is your time to, like, rebuild and figure out, like, you're now nothing, ego's gone, death of the ego, I guess. And then it was like, who are you? What are you? What are you doing? And I was like, oh shit, I had to figure this out. Like, so yeah, I guess booking me into a therapist, and then the therapist helping me unlock some tools to deal with, like, I was having horrific anxiety at the time, like panic attacks where I'd even be at work and I'd, like, have to go downstairs and, like, sit in a corner and just breathe because I was, like, freaking out about all sorts of things. Like,
wow, and never in your life did you ever have these
Never.
voices? Wow.
Never. It was just all at once.
I think I've mentioned this before, but my favorite speaker is a shaman, and he says there comes a point where you have to fight for your own life.
Yes.
And that is the moment when you wake up. And he
100%,
says,
yeah.
and this is what I've seen in you, it's like, you don't do it so that you can be famous or somebody will love you. You do it so that you teach other men, women, people how to get through it.
Yeah, and I truly do feel that that was maybe my purpose or whatever it is, like that. It was like showing me that you're going to get through this, and then it was another side of it was being like, and you're going to help people get through this. It was like, I don't know, almost like because I was being so open about my mental health on social media, on all sorts of platforms, and talking to anyone who will listen about it. Like, I wasn't shy. Like, I guess at the start, I didn't know what was happening. So I had, like, some work friends actually mentioned to my manager, like, not saying, like, in weird ways, they were just like, man, like, Josh isn't being himself, and I'm kind of worried. Like, not in saying, like, they were like, oh, I don't want to work with him, he's being weird. It was more just like, they're my friends, right? So they were saying, like, wait, I'm not sure what's going on with Josh, but maybe someone should ask him. And that was huge. Like, I cannot thank them enough to have put themselves out there like that, to mention it to my manager, who, they're all my friends as well as just work colleagues. So that was huge to have that, and then to have their support. And then even the same in summer, it was like, I'd go into work as a distraction, and then sometimes if I wasn't feeling it, they'd just be like, just go home. Like, it wasn't like, oh, you have to be here till 5, that's your schedule. It's like, just go home and do what you got to do. So that, it's good having support in any way, shape or form. But the truth is that with mental health or depression, anxiety, is like, no one's going to fix it for you. Like, or no one's going to be the one that's just going to flip the light switch. It doesn't work like that. I think I thought for so long that I'd be able to wake up one day and just be like, oh, it's over, I'm better now. And then it wasn't until it really sunk in and made me realize that I was like, it's not a light switch. It's like it's a progressive thing. You have to work on it and you have to practice it to want to be better.
And this will be the story of your whole life. Like, it's
Yeah.
not over.
No, not, yeah. I actually had a conversation with my dad on the phone the other day, and I guess from our parents' generation, they didn't quite deal with this like we do now. It was kind of like a bit, especially in males, it was like no, you're the man of the house, you are there for everyone else, like, and no, just don't feel like that. Look what's around you, like, you live in a beautiful place, you have a great car, you whatever, like, and it's like, that stuff doesn't matter, but that's how they dealt with it. It was like, I don't understand, because you have everything, but the material doesn't matter, it's the internal is what gets you. So I guess, yeah, like, it was like a realization of being like, I have to deal with this myself and not the way my parents sort of dealt with it. And my dad on the phone, he sort of said to me like, oh, so like, you think you've gone out the other side now with it? And I was like, oh, Dad, I don't know if it works like that. But, but like, it was genuine. He wasn't trying to like, but it just made me click. I was like, wow, it's just a different way of thinking, right? So,
have you ever heard about epigenetics?
No. Actually,
okay,
no.
So they think sometimes that our pains are ancestral, and it's stuff that your dad, your grandfather never dealt with.
Okay.
And now it's Josh's to break that family.
I can totally believe that. I've never had a relationship with my dad where we spoke about this kind of stuff at all. Like, it's only recently that maybe Dad opened up to me about maybe ways he was feeling in university and things like that. Obviously not on a level maybe of what I was feeling, but it's the first time that we'd ever really spoken about anything to do with that. So my dad was always just that he'd come home from work and he was happy, how was your day? And he always put us first. He never put himself first. So it was cool to see, like, to see him starting to open up and now starting to put himself first as well, because I think maybe we're both learning from each other in that sense. So that's pretty cool, I guess. And being so far from family as well, when I started dealing with all this it was just me. Like, my family's in Australia, so.
Yeah. Was there a way that you tried to put a Band-Aid on it?
I'm not too sure. I think for a while, maybe I started drinking a little bit, I think. Like, I made myself, I didn't want to be alone, so I went out every night. Like, not necessarily to drink, more to just be, like, away from my own thoughts and be with people, because I'm a very social person. I love being with people. And I think for me, that was my Band-Aid, but the whole idea of it was trying to teach me that, like, you need to learn to be alone. And I just kept avoiding it. And then obviously alcohol is a depressant, so when you're in a state like that and drinking that much, it's never going to help. And it literally wasn't until, same deal with my manager Abby, she was like, Josh, you've been drinking every night. Do you think that's doing it? And it's like, sometimes it takes someone else to make you click and go like, fuck, she's right. Like, damn it. Like, so yeah, I had to taper off. I did, I remember I did Sober October, and that was, I've never had like a drinking problem or anything like that, or any substance abuse, but doing that was actually like, it was really good.
Yeah.
It was the best I felt that for the whole of October.
So going back a little bit, I'm so curious about this. What do you think is a man? Like, what is a man?
Oh, wow. I don't know anymore. I feel like I've had such a like death of ego and death of the image of what you're supposed to be, that like, yeah, I just realized that I was like, I don't even remember what my expectations were or what I was supposed to be. I think maybe back a while ago, I had this image of being like, yeah, maybe this tattooed, sort of somewhat tough guy who, I was always there for my partner, and she had anxiety and depression, and I was just the strong one. I always had to be strong. So maybe that was like an image of it, being like the anchor for people, like being that person for other people. But I also didn't realize that I was anchoring myself to them. So maybe, I guess the idea of a man is like...
I actually really love what you're saying, because I think the whole movement toward dropping gender, dropping race, is that we are the same.
100%.
And maybe it's also the death of what a man is. What is a woman? What is a
That's very true, yeah.
girl?
Because it is just like, I guess we're all just beings.
Yeah.
At core, like we're all just, I guess like, I don't know, this is all new to me, but I guess we're all just like souls that are just trying to find their way, whatever that is. I don't know, it's like, I just like realize that I'm like, there's no expectations, there's no path to walk, there's no like this is how you do this is how life is going to be. Maybe our parents' generation sort of instilled that in us. It's like, hey, this is what's going to happen. You're going to go to university, then you're going to get married, you're going to have kids, and that's just how life works. But like, I guess you realize like there's no path. It's just you have to just figure it out and do what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really weird thing to explain, actually.
Yeah, and it makes it more challenging because at least if I knew I was going to get married, have kids, have this full-time job, retire when I'm 65, I mean, then it's laid out for me. That's a little bit easier.
Yes, yeah.
But when you walk a path of least resistance, the Tao says, you know, it's like nothing is predictable. And if it were, how boring.
How boring, exactly right,
Yeah.
There's like one quote that I don't remember who said it, but I remember hearing Aubrey Marcus say it, and he said that like, never become perfect because you'll have no one to relate to.
Whoa.
And I was like, damn, like that's huge because no one is perfect. Like, what even is perfect? It's not a thing. Like,
it would be a facade.
It would be. Yeah.
What are some of your favorite quotes?
Oh man, like I guess that one's a big one that resonates with me. Like it sits with me a lot. I'm never good at this stuff. It always like comes to me like off the, like at random times. I'll be like, that's that quote.
Well, you kind of just dropped it, which was perfect.
Yeah. It kind of works like that. But yeah, I can't actually think of other ones off the top of my head. But there's been a lot lately that have been with this whole radically open-minded thing, especially in like a lot of like, I started following like all those like Instagram pages that I know they're like directed towards women with all the inspirational quotes and stuff, but like they helped so much, like because there was just so much perspective in certain things that they say on those pages. And I know that like there's definitely not a lot of men that follow those pages, but for me it was like huge. And I used to send them to a bunch of my friends who were all maybe going through stuff as well, like mostly women, the same sort of thing, because they were more open to that kind of stuff. And when like different quotes like that and things would sink in, it was like pretty amazing. I can't think of them off the top of my head. I wish I could because they have helped me so much.
I love that you're saying that because I think right now who needs help is men.
Yes,
you know,
100%
like
agree.
I think they're floundering, whereas women, we've been starting to recognize like, we're vulnerable, we're feeling sad and anxious, and there needs to be more pillars for men to feel.
And I guess that's what that made me realize is that I need to like put this out there and be vulnerable because of this image of this guy who is covered in tattoos and like works at a snowboard shop and is always really friendly when everyone comes in. It's like there was a part inside of me that was dead, but like I had a face on, a mask on the whole time. So by me putting it on my Instagram and just being like, it's all on the table now. Everyone knows that this isn't what you see in the shop is me. That is me. I am a nice person. I am friendly and I'm excited about snowboarding but you never know what someone is going through. Like,
oh, preach. And the other thing I often think of is like comedians, for instance, where like Robin Williams or like Heath Ledger, but they're out there and they are entertaining us and they're bringing us so much joy.
Exactly.
And on the inside, there's a part of them that's dying like it'll never be good enough. And I do believe it's a slippery slope, especially when you are the light, the jokester, the joy one.
Yes, yeah.
You have lows as well.
Yeah. Because I guess it is like everyone has there's the archetypes, right? Like, and a lot of people kind of focus on that, but no, like it's still all around that death of the ego, the death of thinking who you are. Because it's like the person I was when I walked in this room is already dead. And I'm already a new person, right? So like, because I'm learning, everyone's learning and growing and moving forward, but you have to like really like accept that and understand that.
And we have a tendency to color right now in with what was. Like I remember if I was stuck on Josh from a year ago, I couldn't meet with you spontaneously.
Of course, yeah. That's exactly right, yeah. Actually, I just thought of one quote that did really sit with me, that was huge, was something Peter Crone said, and he said, it was when I was sitting there the whole time questioning of like, what could I have done differently to not be in this position? Whether it was with a girl, whether it was a relationship thing, whether it was just where I was at in life. I kept saying like, oh, what if I did this? Or like, what if things went this way? And it was like, Peter Crone said, nothing could have ever been any different because it wasn't. There is no other possible outcome. Everything is the way it is because it is.
Totally.
And until you really like breathe that in and like let it sink, it's like so much more freedom because you just like, it's just acceptance, right? Of being like, everything was, and now like I look at, that summer was one of the most horrible times of my life. And sometimes I still will like today I finally got my journal back out for the first time, and since December 2nd was the last time I wrote in it, and I wrote in it every single day from like August till December 2nd. Every day I wrote in it, and I haven't written in it at all. And even just reading some of the previous pages, I felt everything I felt in that moment, like physically, and it was like brutal. I've even had like where I saw a friend recently and she wasn't having the best day, and I remember really helping her. She came to me and I really helped her with just like things I'd learned, things I could say to her, and helped her like get a bit more perspective about it. And then I remember getting home and I remember looked in the mirror and I could instantly thought of the pain she was in, and I remembered that pain, and I fell to the floor. Like I literally fell to the ground, because I was like, I could remember that pain so deeply, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. But it is pretty nice to be able to like be on the other side of it, or just be like, okay, that was, and I know that happened, and it was important.
Yeah.
So as much as I hated the way I felt all summer, I would never change it if I could. I never would, because it needed to happen.
Yeah, and it needed to be that aggressive to wake you up.
100%, yeah. It needed to be the ton of bricks. It wasn't supposed to be like a linear thing. It was supposed to be like, we're going to pummel you so deep into the ground and you're going to have to get out.
And you have gone through a major transformation, right? You had mentioned to me before that you used to be a little bit overweight.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Can you tell me about who you were when you were a little bit chubby?
I guess so, yeah. I guess like, I was never like ridiculously overweight.
Okay.
I was just definitely like, I was a bigger guy, that's for sure. But I guess when I was back in Sydney, I was working the 9 to 5. I got really into cars. When I was a kid, I was a surfer. All I did was surf. I had no money. So all I did was surf all day, eat next to nothing. So I was in great shape. And then as I got a bit older and I got my license, I got really into cars, and I spent more time in the garage, and I had a job. So I'd buy McDonald's and takeout and things like that all the time. And before I knew it, I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh my gosh, what have you done? Like, stop surfing. And I was like, all of a sudden just like really chubby, and I was like, oh no, what have I done here? But luckily my partner at the time, she never really said anything. But she also was the same. We both just got really comfortable, you know, being 18, 19, having jobs and money, and we went out to dinner all the time and did like, you know, being adults for the first time or whatever.
Yeah.
But not realized. And then, yeah, I remember that was the time where I think I thought I was doing just fine, but I think I always actually was like masking maybe an internal battle with just keeping busy. Like I'd always be in the garage working on my race car, like, you know, building it, whatever, like, and I'd be spending money, and I'd spend every cent I got as an apprentice mechanic, which was nothing. And I'd spend every cent I had, and then, you know, my dad was so supportive that he'd never give me money to like buy stuff for the car, but he'd lend me money if I like blew up the engine or something like that, and then I'd pay him back and put a new motor in it. But I think, yeah, that me as a person then was like, I had a great time, but I was very distracted, so I never did any self-help. So it was always like a distraction. So the car, so I was always overweight. I was drinking energy drinks all the time. Like I was just like, you know, just like not a healthy person.
Yeah.
And then I guess when I started this more snowboard side of my life, even just before that, I joined the gym, realized I needed to lose some weight and things like that. But I also realized that it was like the 9 to 5 never sat with me. I thought that's what you had to do. I thought that was the path, that you have to get a job. And I've got 3 trades, but I just didn't like any of them. I didn't want to do any of them anymore. So it wasn't until I literally went and moved to a snow town and got a job in a snowboard shop, something I love, and talked about snowboarding all day in weird schedules, and I had no money because I worked minimal hours. It was the happiest I'd ever been. And that was the realization when me and my wife at the time realized that she was like, this is the happiest I've ever seen you, and you need to continue this, and I'm going to keep chasing my dreams in Sydney. And that was when we made the unfortunate split, which now in hindsight we both like are so thankful for each other that we did that.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I think it speaks so loudly when couples can part in an amicable way. I'm curious about snowboarding for you. Like, what is the feeling of it for you? Like, why do you love it so much?
I guess it is freedom. Like, to me, it's like my brain turns off and it's just pure joy. Like, I think maybe last season was a little different for me because I was going through knee injury, maybe a little rocky in a relationship, or not realizing, but I had, when you have that inner feeling that something's not right, but you don't talk about it or whatever. Maybe I went through that, and then So I was feeling, snowboarding was still good, I could turn my brain off, but I think my snowboarding ability was very stunted by maybe internal, nothing to do with the physical, but this season, also it was my first season working at Root Boys, so not that I've ever been egotistical with snowboarding, but I think I did feel like I wanted to be better because I worked in such a beautiful shop with amazing snowboarders and amazing people that I kind of wanted for myself to be better, to maybe like look better in the shop. Maybe like the ego was involved, where this season, snowboarding wise, I've progressed more than I have in years because I just was like, snowboarding is my joy. And if I just go out and my goal every time I go snowboarding now is to have the most amount of fun of anyone on that hill. Like no one is having more fun than I am. And I've progressed so much.
You know, it's really interesting. So in the program that I took for coaching, they talk about the highest level that someone could ever be is a pure state of passion. So it's not about winning or losing. It's pure passion, pure joy. And a client of mine is a professional skier, and he said, well, I'm an athlete, so it is about winning and losing. And I said, well, what if you drop that? And what if it was really just like who could have the most fun out there? We chatted after one of his races. He said, it's a complete game changer. I've stepped my game up. It feels different.
Wow.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. It's the same with yoga. Like they say, the poses are gifted to you.
For sure, yeah. So instead of trying to do the pose, I guess, you just let it. You just enjoy it. Try and enjoy it, and then it will probably happen. Yeah. Rather than trying so hard.
Yeah.
Because I remember the same thing. I even was trying to learn a certain trick last season, same sort of thing, and I remember trying to do it over and over and over and over, and I never got it. And then this season, I was just like, I'm just gonna go have fun. And then one time, I jumped on a rail, and my body just did it. And I was like, I just did that trick that I've been trying for 3 years, first try, and I wasn't trying to do it. Whoa. It's just like, because I was in the moment of, I was just having so much fun, my body was like, you know how to do this. And the ego was gone. It wasn't like, I need to land this trick. It was just like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're still gonna have fun if you don't land it, and no one cares if you don't land it. And then all of a sudden it just happened. Now I can do so much more because I'm just like, I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm just doing it for me. This is all for me.
Oh, I love that. And what advice would you give to people in a position where they're struggling, be it relationship, but they're having like anxiety and depression, and they're not really fitting in? What would be your advice?
It definitely comes back to that being radically open-minded. Like, look for sources that don't make sense to you. Don't fight anything. If you've always been a person that's like, oh, I'm not into spiritual things, or, you know, like anything like that, like, just try it and be open-minded about it. Because you have to, I know that like it's really hard to, when you're in that horrible part of depression, especially, where you feel like nothing will ever make you feel good again. And then it's easy to, misery loves company. You get addicted to it. Like, you almost want to be upset. You want to cry. You want to be sad. And I went through the same thing, but you also have to have a part of you that wants to be better. And if you really do want that, like, you'll figure it out. Yeah. But you also have to just be like willing to try anything. Like, I did the weirdest stuff. I went on hikes by myself. Like, I did so many hikes solo. Just put my headphones in, listen to podcasts, listen to music. I did a 2-hour hike where I think I cried the whole way, non-stop. Like, I was so sad, and all of my body was telling me in that moment was like, you're just going to be sad right now. I just had to do that. Yeah. You know how it is being like a big tattooed guy walking on a trail, like trying to like hide your eyes from other people coming the other way by yourself, like just crying, but like, that's okay. Like, it
is, because emotion, it translates as to move.
Definitely.
And like, you can shove it down, you can eat it down, you can screw it away, but it's still gonna live there in your belly. Yeah,
and it's always the more you pile it up, it's just gonna come back worse. So if you let it out when it needs to come out, in any way, shape, or form, whether that's you crying, whether that's you just being in your room alone or going for a walk, like, just do it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, one thing I always had to realize that, like, I had to keep telling myself that I wasn't just here for everyone else. Because I am a very giving person. I really love doing things for people. Like, it makes me happy. But I didn't realize that I was actually using it as a distraction. So I'd go and be like overly nice to everyone, which is me. I wasn't doing that as a front. But I didn't realize that I wasn't giving myself that time. Yeah. And it wasn't actually until I started experimenting with like psilocybin, like magic mushrooms essentially, and trying to do I started microdosing them. And then they have been, like, they're not going to be for everyone, but for me they were very detrimental to making me more aware and open and clear-minded, to think more rationally. Yeah. And that was, experimenting with them was huge. And the fact that then not use more in all sorts of therapy and stuff like that is blowing my mind.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're very beautiful. Like, obviously, like, I think most people have probably experimented in the sense that they maybe eaten them and then just laughed with their friends and had a good time, or the trees might have been moving a bit, stuff like that. But it's not until you actually, like, the use of mushrooms and then be by yourself. And then for me, it was staring at a mirror. Like, I had the most vivid experience where I did I didn't fast, but I sort of didn't really eat much during the day. And then I actually ended up eating 3.5 grams of mushrooms.
Okay.
And I locked myself in my room and I put on a certain playlist, which is called the John Hopkins Psilocybin Study. And it's a university that studies mushrooms or something. I don't even want to say that, but this is what I sort of like gathered, is that these guys knew what they were talking about. And I just went with, all right, whatever, I'm going to try it. And I actually had a realization that was probably my biggest breakthrough in my depression, was in that trip. That the first part of the trip was that I saw all these different females in my life. I'm very close with females. I feel more comfortable talking with females. I'm not sure why. I still, like, obviously have a lot of male friends and stuff, but maybe when on topics like this and deeper stuff, it is a lot easier to talk to females about it. But I saw these different females in my life, like, coming up to me, and they were just walking past me in this weird, like, ethereal plane. It looked like an elven garden from Lord of the Rings, but everything was like see-through, nothing was solid, and it was beautiful, right? Like, I was never scared. The whole thing was just magical. And all these different people who were important in my life were just walking past me, and they'd all be walking past me with this, they wouldn't say anything, but they just had this smile of like, I'm so proud of you. And that was like, it was huge. And I was just sitting there like, smiling. I remember myself smiling. This is all in meditation. And I could feel myself smiling and so happy, and like I felt so loved, to the point where I saw, like, you know, ex-partners, good friends, like all sorts of people coming and just smiling and just being so proud of me. And then I saw my mom, and she was the same thing. She was very happy. And then I saw my sister, and everyone else was sort of walking like past me in this trip. And my sister was walking straight at me. I haven't seen my sister in 3 years. And she walked up to me and she just held me, and I could feel her hugging me. And this is all just in my room in meditation. And I could feel her holding me, and she didn't say anything. She just looked up at me, and it was the same thing of like, I'm so proud of you. Like, and you like, essentially, like, you're doing it. Like, you're there, you know what I mean? And that was like so incredible to me, to have someone who, because I haven't spoken in depth about my mental health with my siblings either. They've been very supportive, but we haven't had like open conversations about it, because I still feel like I'm the eldest. I have to be the strongest, so I don't feel comfortable about it still. Even though that's silly. But yeah, that was the first part of my trip. And then the second part, I remember it was a full moon, and there was something that said to me, it almost sometimes got so intense that my brain would be like, sit up, and I'd be like, okay. And then it would be like, drink water. I'd be like, okay. Like, and then it'd be like, lay back down. I'd be like, yep, okay. It was like, I was a passenger, but it was like, it was really good. And then I remember my brain was like, you need to go look at the moon. And I was like, okay. So I went outside my bedroom and I went into the living room. This was like 11 o'clock at night, so everyone was asleep. I went and I sat at the moon, and it was full moon. It was beautiful, and I could feel like a crazy amount of energy. Like, I had tingles all over me. Like, my hair was standing up, and I just felt so good. Like, I felt like so sure of where I was supposed to be. Everything was meant to be happening to me at that exact moment, in the exact way it was. And then my brain, or the mushrooms, I don't know, said to me like, hey, like, so you love where you live? And I was like, I do love where I live. Like, it's beautiful here. Like, and then it was like, yeah. And then you love snowboarding. I'm like, I do. And it's like, you get to do that all the time. And I was like, yeah. And it's like, you love your job. I was like, yeah, I do love my job. And then it kept saying all these things of like, things I loved so much. It's like, you love your truck. You love your, like, all these like silly things, right? And I was like, you're right. And then it was like, you love your tattoos. And I was like, I do love my tattoos. And it was like, you love your long hair. I was like, I do love my long hair. And it was like this huge realization of self-love that it made me realize that, like, and then it stopped me, and it was like, so you love yourself? And I was like, damn, I do love myself. I was like, this is massive. Like, I actually do really love who I am. Like, and that was huge. And then it was weird. It took like not a spiral, but then it stopped, and it was like, yeah, let me like breathe that in for a minute. And then all of a sudden it was like, this is all while staring at a full moon, just being like, whoa, you know, amazed, like just amazed. And then it was like, but you have depression. And I was like, whoa, mushrooms, like, hey, come on, like, I thought we were doing good here, like, what's going on? And then it was like, and I was like, yeah, I guess I do have depression. And it was like, and that's a part of you. And I was like, yes, that's a part of me. And it was like, but you love yourself, and you love every part of you. And I was like, like I do love every part of you. And it was like, you have to love your depression. You have to, like, it was acceptance. And that was the biggest breakthrough I had in my depression, of accepting that it is a part of me, but it doesn't define me, but it is a part of me. And I just, once I accepted that, I was like, wow, like, that's okay. Like, it's not like, oh, like, he's depressed or he has depression. It was just like, I think everyone does. Maybe it hasn't come up yet, or everyone deals with it in different ways, but the acceptance of it, which I didn't think was, to me, not necessarily possible, maybe without psilocybin, but it is very possible. It's just a state.
That was your way.
That was my way of my brain slowing down, unlocking it, thinking more clear, and it was incredible. And then I remember just lying there and just being like, oh my gosh, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. It was amazing. It was. Yeah.
It's like if you were afraid there was a ghost under your bed.
Yeah.
And you were just all night like, I was pee the bed because I'm so
exactly.
afraid.
I'm not moving. I'm not lifting these covers. I'm just going to sit here.
It's going to get me.
Yeah.
But if I turn on the lights, look under my bed, and maybe there is a monster, but the light is on. So what you've done is just called the shadow into the light.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Just like you can't shame away. You can't judge judgment away. You can't depress depression.
Exactly right. Yeah. It was huge acceptance, and it was that gives you so much freedom when you do accept that you are the way you are, but it doesn't necessarily like define who you are. It's just like,
it's a very interesting part of you. Makes you interesting.
Yeah.
And where are you gonna go? Like, what's your plan of life?
I have like, I think we were talking about this the other day, and I sort of realized that like, right now in the way the world is currently, it's giving us all like a very big sense of being present. So I always sort of had a plan. Where am I going next? I lived my life winter to winter. So I was like, okay, I'm in Australia now doing my Australian winter. Am I going to go to Japan? Am I going to go to Canada? Like, where am I going to go next? What resort in Japan am I going to go do a job at? Where can I get jobs at? Things like that. So that was always my like next step. But then with COVID grounding me, not being able to travel, because I guess I was supposed to go back to Australia this summer and do another winter, but I got stuck here and then decided to stay, and then this is when I had all this realization, and so it was meant to happen, right? But I guess right now I'm just kind of just living day by day. Like,
I love that.
I love the mountains. I know I belong in the mountains, whether that's Banff, Revelstoke, I don't know, whatever mountain town. I'm just realizing that I'm not going to plan anything currently. I'm just going to enjoy myself and live in the present moment and try and just be enjoying what I have in front of me right now.
There's just a bit of a whisper of perhaps like a podcast or like a whisper of like helping other people. But the whisper will get louder.
Exactly, yeah. I guess, that is definitely something that I have been thinking about. It's almost like saying, it wasn't even me being like, oh, maybe I should start a podcast. It was just like, you need to start a podcast.
You get called to it.
Yeah, and it was like, and then you need to talk to all these people, and you need to start talking about mental health.
Yeah.
And it's going to help people.
Oh, 100%.
Because that whisper, I think, really is something telling me that I'm supposed to help people.
Oh, yeah. They say your pain directs your path.
Yeah, definitely.
You are the teacher you never had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a good one, actually.
And you know, whenever I'm creating content, doing programming, I always try to be that Erin is the avatar, because I feel like I've never got what I wanted, so I give what I would want.
Okay.
You know, so it's like I make sure, does this avatar like it? Is it gonna help that avatar? Yeah.
And it is that same thing. I guess everyone has something in them like that. Like, it is every time that you're at our place or whatever, and I imagine like every time it's like the first question you ask me is always so wholesome. It makes me think so deeply, and I'm just like, not negatively, just like really great. I'm like, wow, like you give me so much perspective, and that's why it's really great that's why I was so happy when you asked me to come on, because I was like, I know this is going to be a good conversation.
It's just such a delight to see you. And before we close, I'm curious, what book would you recommend, or what are your favorite books?
Okay, this is going to sound really bad, but I have such severe ADHD that I can't read properly, so I do audiobooks, if anything. And the last one that I actually listened to the whole way through was a book called High Magic by Damien Eccles.
Okay.
And it was like, it was actually like a meditation practice that he does. That's like very interesting. I haven't been doing it a lot lately because it is quite intense, but it's basically, Damien Eccles was imprisoned wrongly for he was in solitary confinement for 11 years because he lived in a very small town in, I think it was like South America, in like Texas somewhere, and he was like, this small town, him and his buddy were into meditation and sort of like, you know, they were in metal and like they were the different kids in a very religious town. So I believe I could be wrong here, but I think it was like 2 young boys got murdered and the police basically just pinned it on the metalheads, or these kids that were into spiritual stuff. And so they got wrongly imprisoned for a long time, and he learnt a meditation practice and he used manifestation and just all these beautiful things that kind of correlate from all different ways to help himself get through solitary confinement. To the point where he was doing practices that was like calling in archangels into the room with him, and he became friends with them, and was hanging out and talking to them, and that was interesting. So
yeah, I like that kind of stuff too. I've just started to follow Abraham Hicks.
Oh yeah.
I'm actually really enjoying it. At first I thought, nah, but I love it.
Yeah, it's really great. Like I find Abraham Hicks is amazing. Peter Crone, he's incredible. He calls himself the Mind Architect.
Cool.
I think I definitely listen to a lot more podcasts than I do actually read. Yeah, anything that's going to help me give me perspective. Yeah, I really like.
Yeah, keep your eyes open.
Yeah, just different ways of thinking to try and stop the cloudiness, because sometimes you get clouded with a lot of things, and it's really cool to have someone to help you think clearer. And often with Peter Crone uses words. Like words are really important because it's our language, right? And for our beings, I guess. So like having those words help you understand. Yeah. Even though sometimes I have to listen to the podcast 3 or 4 times over because I have no idea what he's saying, because the words are way bigger than my schooling career when I did listen. So, but yeah, I'd say podcasts have been huge for me.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I love podcasts. And then lastly, tell me, who is your biggest inspiration?
Oh wow. I'm just going to say the first person that comes to my head, but it's actually Abby, my manager. Yeah, she's an incredible human. She's done a lot, and she's so driven and motivated. And I don't know, that's just the first person that came in my head. So that must just be what
she's the one.
In the present moment, she's definitely a huge inspiration for me. Especially snowboarding, life. Just everything.
It's wild because they say that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, but also that these people come into our lives, and maybe it's maybe their angel told them, go talk to him, sign him up to talk to a therapist.
Yeah.
She's also so adorable. She looks like one of the Olsen twins.
She does.
She's so cute. I call her
the funny thing about Abby as well is that we actually grew up. So she grew up in Australia.
Really?
And she grew up like not even 10 minutes from where I did. Yeah, but just on sort of slightly different timelines, so we never knew each other, but she was like 10 minutes from where I grew up, was where she grew up. But she moved to Canada quite early, but yeah.
That's so cool.
It's weird how paths sort of cross like that.
I know. Even you and Sarah, and I heard about you, and she was telling me about this guy, and then I searched him, I'm like, he's so cool, and then I got to meet you, and I'm like, he's even cooler. Thank you so much. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, would there be a way to get a hold of you?
For sure. It's definitely, my Instagram's probably the best. It's the dog god, or it's a lot, but I'm sure we'll put it up somewhere so you can...
I will. And so the reason that's his tag is apparently he knows every dog in town.
Dude, I know the dogs' names before I know the owners. It's bad. But yes, I don't know what it is about dogs, but I've always had some sort of weird connection to them, and they bring me immense amount of joy. Because they're so pure, and they know as well, but they don't judge. Dogs don't judge. You could be anyone. And they'll love you. So I think everyone should learn a little bit from dogs. Yeah.
And why, it's interesting you talked about the anchor. Why the anchor on the neck?
I actually was thinking this the other day, and the reason I actually got the anchor tattoo on my neck was because I really like traditional artwork. I grew up around the sea. I was a fisherman, I was a surfer. I love the ocean. Gives me a very similar feeling to the mountains do. There's a lot of energy there, a lot of unknown, a lot of humbling, because you're very small in that sort of environment. But it was actually funny you said it, because when I messaged Jess, my tattoo artist that does it, who's also lives in town here, and she's an incredible person as well, I sort of just said to her, hey, I just want one of your traditional pieces. And I said, I just want it nautical. That's all I said. But then she came up with this design, and I was like, anchor. I was like, the anchor kind of fits. So it's really weird how the universe kind of puts that all together. And I've always said that I was always an anchor for people, and I always anchored myself to people. And I've always had this thing around anchors. And then all of a sudden, that's what she came up with for my neck tattoo.
Very cool.
Yeah.
The rock always says everyone needs an anchor, and he's talking about like for him it's the gym, but he's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
everyone needs something.
to ground them. And
Yeah.
for me, I think that's probably snowboarding for sure. I think.
Yeah.
Mm.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you so much for
time.
having me
It's
on.
lovely.
It's been great. Yeah, thank you.